Welcome to the Folktale Project. This is Dan Schulz. Today's story is another English folktale, and it's a doozy. It involves a very sly shepherd who is considered a fool, and how he wins the hand of a princess. This is Princess of Canterbury. There lived formerly in the County of Cumberland a nobleman who had 3 sons, 2 of whom were comely and clever youths, but the other a natural fool named Jack, who was generally engaged with the sheep. He was dressed in a parti-coloured coat and a steeple-crowned hat with a tassel, as became his condition. Now, the King of Canterbury had a beautiful daughter, who was distinguished by her great ingenuity and wit, and he issued a decree that whoever should answer 3 questions put to him by the princess should have her in marriage, and be heir to the crown at his decease. Shortly after this decree was published, news of it reached the ears of the nobleman's sons, and the 2 clever ones determined to have a trial, but they were sadly at a loss to prevent their idiot brother from going with them. They could not by any means get rid of him, and were compelled at length to let Jack accompany them. They had not gone far before Jack shrieked with laughter, saying, "I have found an egg!" "Put it in your pocket," said the brothers. A little while afterwards, he burst out into another fit of laughter on finding a crooked hazel stick, which he also put in his pocket, and a 3rd time he again laughed extravagantly because he found a nut. That was also put with his other treasures. When they arrived at the palace, they were immediately admitted on mentioning the nature of their business, and were ushered into a room where the princess and her suite were sitting. Jack, who never stood on ceremony, bawled out, "What a troop of fair ladies we've got here!" "Yes," said the princess, "we are fair ladies, for we carry fire in our bosoms." "Do you?" said Jack. "Then roast me an egg," pulling out the egg from his pocket. "How will you get it out again?" said the princess. "With a crooked stick," replied Jack, producing the hazel. "Where did that come from?" said the princess. "From a nut," answered Jack, pulling out the nut from his pocket. "I've answered the 3 questions, and now I'll have the lady." "No, no," said the king. "Not so fast. You still have an ordeal to go through. You must come here in a week's time and watch for 1 whole night with the princess my daughter. If you can manage to keep awake the whole night long, you shall marry her next day." "But if I can't?" said Jack. "Then off goes your head," said the king. "But you need not try unless you like." Well, Jack went back home for a week, and thought over whether he should try and win the princess. At last he made up his mind. "Well," said Jack, "I'll try my vortin. Zo now zor the king's daughter or a headless shepherd." And taking his bottle and bag, he trudged to the court. In his way thither he was obliged to cross a river, and pulling off his shoes and stockings while he was passing over, he observed several pretty fish bobbing against his feet, so he caught some and put them into his pocket. When he reached the palace, he knocked at the gate loudly with his crook, and having mentioned the object of his visit, he was immediately conducted to the hall, where the king's daughter sat ready, prepared to see her lovers. He was placed in a luxurious chair, and rich wines and spices were set before him, and all sorts of delicate meats. Jack, unused to such fare, ate and drank plentifully, so that he was nearly dozing before midnight. "Oh, shepherd," said the lady, "I have caught you napping." "No, sweet Ally, I was busy a-fishing." "A-fishing?" said the princess, in the utmost astonishment. "Nay, shepherd, there is no fish-pond in the hall." "No matter for that," I've been fishing in my pocket, and I just caught one." "Oh, me," said she. "Let me see it." The shepherd slyly drew out the fish of his pocket, and pretending to have caught it, showed it to her, and she declared it was the finest she ever saw. About half an hour afterwards, she said, "Shepherd, do you think you should get me one more?" He replied, "Mayhap I may, when I have baited my hook." And after a little while he brought out another, which was finer than the first, and the princess was so delighted that she gave him leave to go to sleep, and promised to excuse him to her father. In the morning, the princess told the king, to his great astonishment, that Jack must not be beheaded, for he had been fishing in the hall all night. But when he heard how Jack had caught such beautiful fish out of his pocket, he asked him to catch one in his own. Jack readily undertook the task, and bidding the king lie down, he pretended to fish in his pocket. Having another fish concealed ready in his hand, and giving him a sly prick with a needle, he held up the fish, and showed it to the king. His Majesty did not much relish the operation, but he assented to the marvel of it, and the princess and Jack were united the same day, and lived for many years in happiness and prosperity. And that is the English tale of the Princess of Canterbury. And I've been paying attention to these stories and seeing the morals and the mores that it tries to teach us. And I've noticed that I really like these stories of the fool, because they seem to teach us the same lesson that a number of popular television shows and books today try to teach us, which is that everyone is amazing and special and brilliant in their own way, and that we shouldn't cower to expected societal norms. The pretty, handsome, strong, brave sons are almost always the ones who just can't get it done. And it's always someone like Jack who can. This is Dan Scholes for the Folktale Project. Don't forget that you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, Overcast, anywhere you like to get your podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter at Folktale Project. You can find us on Auto Radio, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, anywhere you like to listen. And you can always head over to folktaleproject.com, where you'll find a new story waiting for you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And remember, all this month, there's voting for the Podcast Awards. Head over to podcastawards.com, and you'll find the Folktale Project in the Arts section. I'd really appreciate your vote. And as always, thank you so much for listening.